Colorado's newest gun control law is already facing a court challenge. Legislative session isn't even over. Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, a gun rights group that makes the NRA look soft, is coming for the new red flag law with a lawsuit. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger explains.
You'd think on the second to last day of the legislature, this story would be about bills still being debated.
We shouldn't do it?
Nope. This one's about the red flag bill signed into law last month, the one that allows for the temporary seizure of guns if someone is deemed a risk.
The Democrats didn't see that they were violating the Constitution to pass a bill to violate the Constitution.
Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, the gun lobby in Colorado, is suing to have the red flag law nullified, not because of any Second Amendment concern, but because they believe it did not go through the correct process on the House floor.
If any of the 100 legislators stands up and says, read this bill at length, it is absolutely mandatory that the bill be read at length. There is no wiggle room.
On March 1st, during 10 hours of debate, Republican Representative Dave Williams was ignored.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Read the bill at length.
So you normally say, Mr. Chair, I request that the bill be read at length. He just said, let's read the bill at length. Okay. And so that wasn't a proper motion.
Another lawmaker asked for the bill to be read, and it was, until he asked for it to be stopped partway through. About 10 minutes later, Republican Representative Lori Sain was at the mic.
Shall we read the bill at length again, Mr. Chair?
Sain made more of a suggestion, well, maybe we should have the bill read at length.
Yeah. It seems this lawsuit is about words. Was process and the Constitution violated because of how lawmakers phrased what they said at the mic?
I'm not surprised that RMGO came into the building and tried to find a frivolous lawsuit.
This does not preclude any other lawsuits we might file. In fact, we are pursuing another lawsuit in case this is not successful.
You get a lawsuit, and you get a lawsuit. He wouldn't say what the other lawsuits are going to be challenging, especially since red flag laws in other states have faced challenges, and those challenges have failed. Dudley Brown, Kyle, also says he's pursuing recalls now against 9 representatives and 3 senators, although there's still just the one official recall effort going right now that's collecting signatures, but he's ready to throw money at 11 others, apparently.
We are entering what essentially is like a nonstop campaign, a nonstop political season, are we not?
It seems that way. And don't they know that 21 people are running for president that I have to focus on at some point, too? Yeah.
Huh. And somebody's paying for all this stuff, too, so you can bet they're shaking the trees for money. All right. Thank you, Marshall. Huge win for anti-vaxxers at the state capitol today. Democrats abandoned their bill to formalize the process for families to get vaccine exemptions for their kids. There isn't time to pass everything that's still on the calendar, so the Democrats who are in charge are starting to make choices. The hotly contested sex ed bill is still alive with 1 day left. One of Governor Polis's campaign promises may fail because of a lack of time and will. The bill that would ask voters to pass a hefty nicotine tax to try and keep teenagers and kids from smoking and vaping still has 2 votes ahead of it, so if it is not voted on tonight, that also dies. There is one particular question that a number of Next viewers have asked about what led up to the crash on I-70 that killed 4 people last week. Alan, Holly, Heather, John, Janet, few of those of you who have asked about the truck driver, the man that police say caused the crash, and whether that driver, a native Spanish speaker, could understand the traffic signs telling him about runaway truck ramps. The arrest report says he passed up ramps before the crash. The suspect is from Cuba. Lakewood police asked for a translator when they went to interview him. Alan specifically asked, would it be helpful to have the runaway truck signs in English and Spanish? CDOT says its engineers will look at everything in their review of the crash, and that includes the idea of bilingual traffic signs. But there's a reason why they aren't there already, and that's the thought that too many signs or too many different words create a distraction. Drivers will be taking their eyes off the road to read them. Federal rules require that anybody who's driving a truck like that, anybody with CDL license in the U.S., has to know how to read and speak English sufficiently to understand the highway traffic signals and signs. There are 8 written tests to get a CDL driver's license. 7 are offered in English and Spanish in Colorado. Well, this might come as a surprise, but a terrorism suspect will walk out of prison after nearly a decade in custody. The ringleader of a foiled bombing plot will soon be released, nearly a decade after his arrest in Colorado. Najibullah Zazi was sentenced in New York today to 10 years. Time served. Zazi was arrested in Aurora in September 2009. FBI agents had tracked his movements between here and New York City. He and 2 other men planned to carry out a suicide bombing in the New York City subway on September 11, 2009. Zazi pleaded guilty in February 2010, and he agreed to cooperate with investigators. Prosecutors credited him for extraordinary assistance to authorities. He testified in 2 trials implicating his friends and co-conspirators. And in 2015, he testified against an al-Qaeda operative. His lawyer thinks he'll be released within the week. Zazi is a naturalized U.S. citizen, and you cannot be stripped of your naturalization for anything other than things that you did before you became a citizen, crimes, or if you lied to become a citizen. So that means that Najibullah Zazi, convicted terrorist and American, will be free to resume his life somewhere in the U.S. if he so chooses. 7-year-old boy put in handcuffs at school. Denver Public Schools acknowledges it's put 58 kids in handcuffs in the last 2 years. So we've been searching for perspective. Is that a lot? Are other districts doing the same thing? Our Sonia Gutierrez talked to a woman who works with kids with disabilities, many of whom have been through similar situations, handcuffed at school.
The story of this 8-year-old boy with autism in handcuffs,
that was one of my first clients,
is framed in Pamela Biscalia's office. She still remembers this case detail by detail.
He took the paraprofessional on the bus. The bus driver turned the bus around. The police department arrived, put him in handcuffs.
Since that story, Biscalia with Advocacy Denver, a group that works with people with disabilities, says she's found a lot more students who go through the same thing in DPS.
It almost becomes their identity.
9 Wants to Know found that in the last 2 years, 58 students were put in handcuffs by the district's safety and security employees. Compare that to 0 in Cherry Creek and Douglas County schools. In JEFFCO public schools, there have been 3 students in handcuffs in the last 2 years. 1 student had a gun, another broke a window, and the 3rd assaulted 2 employees.
I'm very surprised that the district would report there were only 58 children that were handcuffed.
Surprised because she sees a lot more cases like these in DPS.
As young as 3 years old, all the way through high school.
We asked the district to break down the demographics of the 58 students, but they haven't given us that information. Biscalia offers a pattern she sees with her clients, all of whom have disabilities.
We do see that it's almost always male, and it's typically students of color.
She says they can't do anything about the students who were already put in handcuffs, but they can start asking questions.
Was there something else less restrictive that you could have done?
For Next, I'm Sonia Gutierrez.
Pamela's organization, Advocacy Denver, is meeting with the district in a week. They're going to discuss handcuffs and restraint policy. The district tells us it's been working with Advocacy Denver regularly. Colorado Senator Michael Bennet just turned in his resume asking America to hire him as president. He did leave off one specific detail when he entered the race this morning. Bennett's biography and his campaign announcement gives a quick employment history. Current senator, former DPS superintendent, worked for the city of Denver, managing director. Go back to the work for the city of Denver. Oh, yeah, when he was chief of staff for then Denver Mayor John Hickenlooper, Bennett's former boss, who is also running for president. Well, that's an awkward omission. Actually, Hick and Bennet both say that they have much larger challenges than each other in this race. And with the latest CNN poll putting both of them at 0%, I would say that's accurate. If CU's new president is losing any sleep over his contentious hiring today, he could try counting dollars. Mark Kennedy is going to have lots of them. The former Republican congressman from Minnesota takes over the University of Colorado system on a 5-4 party line vote. Republican regions for him, Democratic regions against him. Let's flip through Mark Kennedy's 3-year deal to be CU president. $650,000 the first year, $850,000 after that. He'll get another $50,000 for visiting 4 places in Colorado outside Denver, Boulder, and Colorado Springs. All he has to do is visit. Half of Colorado's counties have a lower median household income than President Kennedy's bonus for driving out to see them. Hey, speaking of the drive, he gets a $15,000 a year vehicle allowance, enough to lease a new Maserati and have $455 a month left over for gas. Kennedy has been criticized for not valuing diversity, so regions want him to write a diversity and inclusion plan. He gets another $50,000 the day he turns that in. You would think that community outreach would just be the president's job, but he gets a $50,000 bonus for doing that. Another $50,000 for turning in a strategic plan. Kennedy is coming here from the University of North Dakota. It's 957 miles away. but I think his $80,000 moving allowance should cover it. CU will also pay for his country club initiation and additional reasonable expenses. Oh, and I forgot, a suite for CU football games, which, let's be honest, is of questionable value. So how does that compare to compensation at other public universities? So numbers obviously shift by contract, by school, by year, but looked at the compensation numbers that the Chronicle of Higher Ed put out last year. Looking at those numbers, CU President Kennedy would be near the top 10 in his first year. It's an enormous order of fish and chips.
It's essentially what a veterinarian would put in your dog at a vet office.
Let me be totally clear, don't eat the fish, they have microchips inside them. He's an in-game organist who doesn't have an organ, yet it seems to work for Avs fans time after time. That's next.
The beautiful cumulus clouds have rolled back in after a pretty nice day. Sunshine and 60s as advertised, getting closer to that average of 66, and we should be even warmer tomorrow and for the weekend. A few light showers on the eastern plains, a little thunder, lightning, and rain. They're moving really fast, these storms, toward the northeast. They'll be in Nebraska in the next couple of hours. Not anticipating severe weather as this whole trough of low pressure shifts east and the stormy weather continues in the southern plain states. Colorado and points westward under the influence of high pressure. We'll see the storm track lifted northward, and that means a warming and drying trend that'll get us close to 80 by Sunday into Monday. A couple of thunder showers on the plains between now and midnight. Those storms move into Nebraska and Kansas. I think easterly winds will push a little fog toward Denver. I don't think it'll get into the city, but out around DIA, Akron, and Lyman. Fog early and then a mostly sunny day. It's Friday. It's going to be beautiful, and wait to see the weekend. Partly cloudy, 37 tonight. An isolated shower early. Fog east tomorrow morning. Close to 70 tomorrow. We do get there over the weekend. 76 on Sunday, 79 on Monday. A few showers coming in Tuesday into Wednesday. And the clouds this time of year do make for a pretty picture in an area like Telluride, Kyle.
Kathy, thanks. So it's not new or novel to build a contraption to help fish get around dams and such. But we are fascinated by how they are tracking whether the fish use a new ramp to get them from Watson Lake into the Poudre River in northern Colorado. Wildlife workers have ordered up fish and chips.
Good morning. Thanks for showing up today. So my name's Kyle Batigi. I'm the local aquatic biologist with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Today, we finished construction and are here to highlight the fish ladder. So for the first time since the 1960s, fish can move upstream if they want to. So since the 1960s, the structure behind me has been impeding fish movement. But with the fish ladder, they now have the option.
244, 164.
I can tell you, as of last Friday, we came out and collected 70 fish from the river and put pit tags in them.
So this is a 32 millimeter tag, very similar to the chips that they put in people's dogs.
So every fish that gets a pit tag, or a microchip, if you will, it has a unique ID, and we can tell one fish from the next from the next. There is technology embedded in the ladder, and when a tagged fish with one of those microchips swims over the wire, the power in the wire actually activates the tag, so we can actually see if the fish is moving upstream or downstream. It's just important as these structures start being built that we're documenting whether or not they're successful. They're expensive, they're a lot of work, and we want to know that they're actually working before we start building a lot of them.
Makes sense. Parks and Wildlife wants to expand the study and get chippy with fish in other areas of the state. We meet a man who has an odd and essential job for the Avs.
The second I did it, I turned to the person who was auditioning me, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. I think I could die now. And they were like, you're hired.
The man behind the music, next. There is something about the atmosphere of a playoff hockey game. The way the crowd reacts to the lightning-fast shifts in the game with deafening energy. The Avs say it really does help their momentum on the ice. Our Steve Stager met a man who helps fire up the crowd at Avs home games. Chances are, you never knew the guy was there.
This is my gypsy jazz group called Deja Swing.
Every musician is trying to find that one great gig.
What do we do? Dances and We play nursing homes and weddings.
Mark Castellano had to adapt a bit for some of his gigs. These photos show you just how much he's changed to fit the part. From suave acoustic guitar player to maybe metal, reggae, fusion, not sure. This lifelong musician keeps himself busy.
Playing in a melodrama in Silver Plume. I'm doing the Deja Swing gigs, the Avalanche, or in the playoffs.
One of those things is not like the other. Mark had to turn himself into a hockey fan for his latest gig.
And I was like, oh, that's cool, they have an organist? And I'm like, I wonder how someone gets that job.
A few months later, that job was posted online, and Mark applied on a long shot, figuring he'd never get it.
They were like, okay, play something. So I played Charge for the first time in the stadium, and the second I did it, I turned to the person who was auditioning me, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. I think I can die now. And they were like, you're hired.
His official title?
How's that?
In-game organist. Though that could be a bit misleading.
I guess keyboard player, I tickle the keys.
By now you've figured out there's no organ.
Organist.
But don't you go thinking Mark isn't the hardest working organist in professional sports.
Gotta lug that keyboard.
He lugs it.
Ready to rock and roll?
In and out of 41 home games a year.
Okay, let the music begin.
And more on playoff years like this.
Let's get the B3 on. Come on. Thank you. It's annoying. I hate moving it.
But once that lugging is over, Mark has a bit of freedom to fire up the crowd.
Every time we score on the Red Wings, you play Red Wings Suck. It's bump, 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 ba-da, bump, 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 ba-da, dun, 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 and the whole crowd screams, Red Wings Sucks.
Just not too much freedom.
There's certain things that are frowned upon, like playing Three Blind Mice, like for the refs. That would surely get me fired. Oh!
And he gets to enjoy his new favorite sport.
It's awesome. There's so much energy.
From one of the best seats in the house.
I like where I am. I can see the crowd.
He certainly had to adapt, but now this musician seems to have found that one big gig.
Some people came up and they were like, we see what you do every night and we really appreciate it.
At Pepsi Center, for Next, I'm Steve Steger.
Mark's been doing this for 3 years. Tonight, he's getting ready for Game 4 against the San Jose Sharks at the Pepsi Center. Game begins at 8. We have your feedback next. You always get the last word here, and we have feedback from Rick Breitenbecker. I hope I said that right. Good Lord, they might as well include bonuses for getting out of bed in the morning and showing up at his office. He's talking about CU's new president. There are some pretty decent bonuses in there. Paul writes, I wonder if the new president was a liberal, would you be digging into his pay with such devotion? I don't recall that in the past. I also don't recall CU having a liberal president. And Sean says, hey, like your jacket. Is that a clip-on tie? It is not. I will see you next time.